Hey everyone, your friendly neighbor Pants is back with another video. Today I want to take a look at 100 crit rate oracles because with the upcoming patch there are new speeds you should aim for when ruining them. I did make this video in the past, but I figured I should delete that one and make an updated one. I'll start off with a quick too long didn't watch, which is essentially the speeds you see here highlighted in blue and green are what you should aim for. One thing to note is the difference in the two charts. One is PvE and one is RTA. The speeds to aim for are different here because speed works differently in RTA than the way it works in PvE areas. I do understand math is like the world's least favorite subject, but for those that are interested, I'll go into some more detail of the spreadsheet you're looking at here and give a nice suggestion for when you take the time to re-rune your oracle if you decide to do so. Another question I'm sure people have is this patch a net buff or a net nerf, particularly to like Juno and Praha, because they're getting a speed buff to replace the reduction in their skill 1 attack bar boost? To which the answer I think is that it's a net buff. This isn't something that's particularly easy to calculate for a couple reasons. One being that like the speed buff is temporary, and two, that it can easily get stripped. So I think to like fully answer that question, you would need to find averages for different scenarios or something like that. But my initial gut reaction is that it is a net buff because Praha gives the speed buff to the entire team, and Juno's condition to get the speed buff makes me think that she'll just have it the vast majority of the time. So I'm sure a lot of you are looking at this chart like, Ben, you're crazy if you think I can rune an oracle at 358 speed or 318 speed or something like that. So one thing I want to show you real quick and also suggest as far as some speeds here. So for example, they have a 100 base. I'm assuming you have a max speed tower. If you don't, why don't you get a max speed tower? 15% increase to your speed. And then here are speed from runes. So plus 130 from your runes, plus 140 from your runes, 150, 160. That brings your total speed to 245, 255, 265, 275. I'm thinking in a ton of different settings in the game, especially RTA, speed lead is just all over the place. You got Oliver with the Vanessa buff. We'll probably see more Vanessas. Sierra herself has a 24 lead, more Tomo, who was recently buffed. At any rate, if you give it a 24 lead, you can see just how much the speeds go up already. See a plus 160 set, to me, that's, you know, a good Guardian level set. 130 is probably more Conqueror level, and you got everything in between. Now the speed buff, you can say if yes equals 0.3, so the speed buff is a 30% speed increase to whatever your total speed is. So if you know what your total speed is, all you do is take that and multiply it by 1.3, and that's what it is with the speed buff. You could even increase that with artifacts with speed increasing effect, though I don't recommend that. It's one of the worst substats on your artifacts. There's like a scenario where I really like it, but I won't go into detail on that. Look for additional damage for your oracles, that's the best. At any rate, you can see here with a 24 lead and a speed buff at these different speeds, we're definitely getting well over 318, well over 358, even at just plus 140. So those higher speeds are certainly attainable, and with the speed buff happening, Juno and Praha in particular should be seeing these speeds pretty often. So last thing before I get into the math of this video is a suggestion as far as if you decide to re-rune your oracles. The way I would go about it is first calculate your speed assuming you don't have a speed buff, and then calculate your speed with the speed buff, and then make changes accordingly if necessary. Let me show you what I mean here with an example using my own Juno, which is currently a Despair Revenge plus 160 build. So at plus 160 without a speed lead, without a speed buff, that puts me at 275. So let's just take a look at RTA. A 275 is right on the money on one of these phenomenon points. This is a good speed to be at, and again, I'll go into the why later in the video, but just trust me for now. My Juno's at 275. So hooray, lucky me, I landed right on a thing, so that was convenient. But let's take a look at if I do have the speed buff, which again, I think should be the vast majority of the time. And you can see that puts me at 358 with the speed buff. So if I go back over here to here at 358, you can see I'm one speed away from another one of these convenient speeds to be at, which is 359. So that tells me if I can get a lucky grind or move one rune around to try and get one more speed, well, I would still be good over here in this 275 range, but I would also be good over here whenever I have the speed buff at the 359 range. Kind of my suggestion to you as far as runing your oracles or re-runing them if you want to is to try and get the best of both worlds if possible. You can see at 275 is really close to 278, so if I can get 3 more speed, then that would put me, at the next better thing over here, in addition to the next better thing over here. So really I should try and get 3 more speed if I can. If I can't, then it is what it is, but that's my little suggestion as far as re-runing goes if you decide to do so. With that, let's jump into the math and I'll explain these charts in more detail. Alright, so for the nerds like me that actually like all this math, I'll go ahead and explain how this works or how this comes about. Now, I'm going to operate under the assumption that you know how speed in Summoner's War works. I don't want to re-explain like speed breakpoints and that kind of thing. So if you have no idea what a speed breakpoint is, if you don't recognize this chart at all, I recommend watching the speed video that I made a while back that explains literally everything you'd want to know about speed in this game. So with that little disclaimer out of the way, let's go ahead and look at the chart over here, which is the pre-patch PvE Oracle scenario. So the green numbers here, that is the typical speed breakpoints, and the blue numbers, that is your what I'm calling phenomenon points or your altered breakpoints, which are just slightly better than the previous breakpoint, but still not quite as good as the next breakpoint. So let me show you what I mean here. If you take a look at 239, for example, at tick number 6, that's when they reach 100% attack bar, and so that's when they would be able to take their turn. Now you look at 261, same thing, tick 6, that's when they reach 100% attack bar, that's when they take their first turn. So everyone in this area all the way up until 285 speed are going to be taking their first turn at tick number 6. So that's to be expected. Now what happens is after they take their turn, they use their skill 1, they're gaining 45% attack bar. You can see the formula up here, 45% attack bar plus whatever percentage attack bar they get every time they move. And what happens is at 239, that brings you to 111, about 112% attack bar at tick number 10. At 261, you're at 118% attack bar, so that's just 18% overflow. You can have attack bar overflow, that's fine. But they're taking the turn at tick number 10. But at just 1 speed more, at 262, the magic happens, and instead of taking the turn at tick 10, they're taking it at tick 9. And the significance there is that over time, you take more turns on average. So if you're taking more turns on average just because you're 1 speed faster, and then you couple that with violent procs, that's where the significance lies. And that's why you should try to aim for these speeds. Especially because like maybe you slow down your monster to these kinds of speeds, you can probably get more stats. So a lot of people in higher siege will rune monsters at like the 239 breakpoint, for example. Like there's a lot of Wu says, even though he's, typically regarded as being a super fast monster with his high base speed, they opt to just make him as tanky as possible to do as much damage with his skill 2 and be at this 239 breakpoint. Now, some people in even higher ranks will opt to be at the 286 breakpoint. It just kind of depends. My general idea is if you have a speed lead or a high base speed, you can probably aim for 286. Otherwise, aim for 239 when it comes to your PvE areas of the game, which is everywhere except RTA and raids. But raid speed doesn't really matter. Now, looking at post-patch, the same concept applies. The only thing that changes is the formula for right after taking turn 1. Instead of getting 45% attack bar, you're getting 30% attack bar with landing all 3 crits on your skill 1. So you can see here, instead of being at 262 as the magic speed to be at for in between 239 and 286, the magic speed is now 245. But it works the same exact way. Or excuse me, the magic speed is 246. But yeah, at 245, 1 speed away, you are going to be taking the turn at the same tick 11, compared to over here, you're taking it at tick 10. So another little significant thing you might have noticed as far as pre-patch versus post-patch is you can see here at the 239, we're taking our turn at tick 11, compared to over here at the pre-patch, we're taking it at tick 10. So it's like they're adding 1 tick to each one of these scenarios. The response to that is you're getting an entire speed buff, which is again, a 30% speed increase. So as far as which is better, let's take a quick little example look at that. All right, so you see here, if I have my Oracle at plus 131, that puts me at that 246 little sweet spot. If I give myself a speed buff, that puts me at 320. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So if I'm here at the 246, let's just say for the sake of argument, I have the speed buff right here at tick 6. So it'll apply here at tick 7. Don't know how that happens, but let's just say that's what happens. So 320, since it's less than 334, it'll do the same exact thing as 286, just with different numbers. We can even just prove that here by changing the number here. So we'll say 320, and you should see tick number 9 should remain yellow and the rest of these remain white. And yeah, that's exactly what we see. So let's go ahead and copy these numbers and apply it to our 246, because again, what we're saying is happening is we take the turn here and we have the speed buff. So now this is what happens differently, which is nothing in this particular case. We're just getting more attack bar overflow, which isn't too significant if we're taking the turn at the same tick. Now the little caveat to this is, for one, the breakpoints in PvE are very widespread compared to RTA, and that has to do with the way it's calculated. RTA is 1.5% your speed compared to PvE being 7% of your speed. So another thing to consider, the more speed you have, the greater amount of speed you'll gain from a speed buff, since a speed buff is 1.3 times your total speed at any given time. So let's take a look again at what this looks like, the same little example that I just did, but we'll apply it in RTA. All right, so for my RTA example, I'm gonna again look at my Juno, which is plus 160, which puts me at 275. And then with a speed buff, multiply that by 1.3, I'm getting to 358. So looking at the RTA chart for post-patch, 275 again is over here, and then 358 would put me in this column because I have to round down to the next column. But at any rate, I'm going to operate under the assumption that again, somehow magically I have the speed buff right here. And so we're going to apply this column to that column and see what kind of significant changes happen, if any. So again, just to check our math, we can change this 351 to 358, and we should still see yellow at 33. And we do. Just to check our math again, if I say 359, I should see the exact same thing as the column to the left. And we do see 101, 101, 9462. And we get a yellow here. I have it like conditional formatting to where if it goes over 100, then it becomes yellow. That way, easy to spot, you know? So back to 358. So we're going to go ahead and copy and paste this and put it over here at the 275, because somehow magically the speed buff gets applied right here in our example. And what happens? Well, now we are taking our turn at tick number 39 instead of tick number 42. So if we're taking the turn now at tick 39 instead of tick 42, we can compare that to pre-patch. So 275 would be this column. We'll say 275. So at 275, we were taking it at tick 39. Compare 39 to 275 here. 39. Interesting. So I'm kind of curious, if we try different speeds, will we find that it's no change? I kind of doubt it. That would be kind of magic. But math can be magic sometimes. But yeah, in this particular example, it seems, as far as is it a buff or is it a nerf, it seems about the same. Because if I apply the speed buff at this speed that I'm at, I'm going to be taking my next turn at tick 39, which same thing happened pre-patch. Without any kind of speed buff, I'm just at 275. I take it at tick 39 because it's a 45% increase instead of a 30% increase. So that's kind of neat. All right, so let's look at 278. So now I'm at plus 163. And then with the buff, that would put me at 362. Let's see what happens there. So again, 362 would put me in this column with the 359. So I'm just gonna change that to 362. I'm gonna take this second turn results and copy that into our 278 right here. And now we're taking the turn at tick 34, and let's compare that to 278 here, which takes the turn at tick 38. So 38 to 34, 34 is in fact better. So I would say as long as the speed buff is there, the vast majority of the time, it's going to be a net buff. Again, the argument from earlier in the video is speed buff isn't always there, but it's probably going to be there a lot of the time. And so, yeah, the added speed buff is pretty nice. Throw on some additional damage by speed on your oracles and enjoy the balance patch. I'd like to hear y'all's thoughts overall on the patch, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.